Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host, Kushalmehra. So today we're going to talk about a book again. The book is called Happiness Happens. Happiness for those who have everything else. I have the author, Robin Singh, with me. Robin, welcome. And thank you very much for joining us here at the Cārvāka podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kushal.
So, Robin, this is your first time on the podcast. We'll get to the book, but can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, also about People Farms and your journey?
Okay, but that would cover the whole book. So I'll try to keep it really, really short. I currently run People Farm, which is an animal rescue and an awareness organization. We started this because we wanted to help animals heal, and we heard we are based in Himachal Pradesh. It's been more than a decade that I've been doing this, and before this, I was a techie and I was running a tech company in the US.
Fair enough. So I want to start with the tagline, not the title. So you say happiness for those who have everything else. Now that can lead to so many questions itself. Ki bhai, what is everything else? Now let's first define everything else. So let's work from there. So we will deal with what is suffering, what is happiness later on. But for what is everything else first?
See, everything else is when you don't have an active desire that you are pursuing. So you are at that point where you're like, I don't know what I want to do next. So this doesn't mean you have to be a multi-millionaire. It just means whatever your existing desires are met. That's all it means.
So if I was to say, let's say, you know how Maslow's pyramids exist, right? Different layers, but Maslow's pyramid is more leading to a stage where you have certain monetary comforts. And then once you have those basic baseline comforts taken care of, you go to. So Maslow's pyramid is very strictly related to the overall monetary materialistic health of the society and the individual. While on the other hand, the Indian model has a twist to it. I always say in India, a fakir can also be equally satisfied. Like a fakir has no monetary kind of lure, but a fakir also philosophizes, and an Amir also philosophizes, because middle class ke paas time nahi hota philosophize karne ka, because middle class bichari, they're busy doing their day-to-day job, doing their daily grind. They don't even get that time to sit back and ponder. So when we talk about everything else, is this like the state where you have achieved a level of comfort in your life where you've kind of ticked the boxes, like bucket lists cover ho gaye of your existence? Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, you can call it comfort, you can call it convenience. Basically, you have met your, where you don't feel the threat that you're going to physically suffer, where you're not emotionally suffering either. So it's like that would mean that, if you want a partner, you have a partner, or you don't even want a partner. Either way, you're not you're not craving, you're not like wanting to want more. So there are two things. It's like, what are you seeking, and what do you have? So either you can raise this bar up, or you can lower this bar. So like you said, fakir or amir. So it's more state of mind than external circumstances. But yeah, go ahead.
No, please complete your thought. I'll ask my question later.
See, so this book, I would say this book is not for people where their struggle is for survival. If your mind's occupied with where my next meal's coming from, then this book's not for you.
Fair enough. Now let's come to the other two definitions that I wanted to focus on. Because again, my background is philosophy. That is my core interest, and I am a stickler for definitions. And I think it's very important. I think people don't understand the value of defining what they say. Like in our daily existence, and please bear with me as I try to make my point. People often misunderstand when I insist on, please tell me what do you mean by XYZ. is because if you yourself don't know what you mean by XYZ, how would the other person know?
I'm with you all the way on this. I mean, in fact, the last chapter of my book, Doing Good, includes that in the beginning of the chapter. That let's define a few things.
Yeah, which is very heartwarming, because usually my biggest grouse with most books that talk about these philosophical journeys and concepts is they don't define them in most writing. And this has nothing to do with Indian writing. This is not a jibe at Indian authors. It's a universal problem. People say a lot of things. I say people say a lot of fluffy things without actually defining them. So in fact, I'm glad you spend, I think, there is a proper chapter on suffering also, where you try to explain what you mean by suffering, and there is a chapter on happiness where you actually try to explain what you mean by happiness. So let's start first with happiness. And a cross question here is, can we understand happiness or suffering without having both simultaneously?
Without having both, I don't think they can exist simultaneously. That's the point I make. I mean, that is right there in how I define happiness. Happiness is absence of suffering. So you can have one after the other. Most people would have experienced both. Like,
So but I guess what I'm trying to say is, isn't a part of happiness what you experience? It's basically a deviation from the other emotion. So
I see.
how can you understand that emotion X without emotion Y?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Not simultaneously. You, of course, have had to experience suffering to understand happiness, but there is no single person who hasn't experienced suffering. We are born suffering.
So would it be fair to say that what you called suffering is closer to what the Buddhists call dukkha in this book?
I talk about three forms of suffering. One is physical. I mean, I don't think that even requires definition. The other is
Yeah.
emotional. Again, doesn't require defining, but still I'll say, like heartbreak is emotional suffering. If you're living in fear of somebody, that's emotional suffering. And third is existential suffering. That would be similar to what the Buddhists said, dukh. So physical suffering is dard, and existential suffering is dukh.
All right. So let's dig into the suffering bit. Now again, see, we often don't realize how many mental models we live our life by. For example, what I call, the world lives by multiple mental models, but the dominant mental models are either the Western model, which is deeply influenced by Abrahamic values, where time is in a linear form. And then there is the Asian model, or the larger Eastern model, where time is cyclical, right? हम लोग ये काल चक्र में फंसे होते हैं, for those who believe in it. And for the time for a Easterner, that's why I think Easterners tend to be more patient in terms of how they look at the world. So I don't want to make this podcast political. I'm just using this as an analogy. Recently, I was seeing the interview of some Chinese ambassador to an American or some British journalist. And, the British journalist was questioning, oh, if America doesn't do trade with you, what will happen? And the answer of the Chinese gentleman was so interesting. He's like, we are here for 5,000 years. We will be here after 5,000 years also. Our way of looking at the world is very different. We are patient people. And the moment that gentleman said that, I was like, this is such an Eastern mindset कि भाई हम तो गोल गोल चक्कर में घूमते रहते हैं, तुम लोगों को लगता है कि टाइम सीधा है. Do you think when you are drawing those mental models, your inspiration is again from the cyclical nature of time model or the linear one?
See, that's the thing. I operate within what I can know. I do not operate with what if time was cyclical. It doesn't matter to me. My whole worldview, what you're calling mental models, I call them worldview, is based on things that I can observe. So which is why I chose my philosophy of life on suffering, especially physical suffering. I said like there's emotional and existential, but I chose physical suffering as the cornerstone of my worldview because it's something that you can observe in all sentient beings. It's very hard to see if an earthworm is emotionally struggling or is going through existential suffering. I mean, so it doesn't matter to me if time is cyclical, if we are reborn, none of it matters to me.
So in a way it's very good. So you're actually focusing on the Tirukkural model in many ways, because Tirukkural always used to talk about the great Tamil philosopher. He was like, भाई इधर की बात करो, इस जन्म की बात करो. So basically आप ये बोल रहे हो अगले जन्म है नहीं है मुझे नहीं मालूम, मैं इस जन्म की बात कर रहा हूँ.
Yes, I will like to clarify one thing. So that is how I choose to live. This is what I know. This is what I'm going to do. I mean, we could all be, part of an aquarium in an alien's tank. We could all be part of the matrix. I don't care. Thing is, this is what I can experience and observe. Now, using God and rebirth and hell and heaven, I'm not opposed to that idea. Using all of that as a mental model to maintain your sanity. That is, I'm not opposed to that idea. But I'm not going to base how I live on that.
But then how do you make sense of the world around you? Because uh, because it's a very important question that came out to me. It's like this was the first question that came in my mind after I finished reading your book, was that you do say God and all these other beliefs are an integral part of human existence. Now, a person like me who does not have any of these in his existence or his existential model, the natural question that came to me is, while you're not opposed to these ideas and you're kind of mildly playing footsie with it, unlike me who doesn't play footsie with it at all. Like I have, वो boat छोड़ चुका हूं मैं, वो kind of a analogy. If I were to, हम दूसरे स्टॉप पे जा चुके हैं, आप दूसरे स्टॉप, आप अभी तक डिसाइड नहीं कर रहे हो कौन से स्टॉप पे जाना है.
No. I have decided. See, here's the thing. Okay, if God comes down right now, sits down, slaps me and says, I exist. My life doesn't change. So that's what I'm saying. My life is not based on that whether God exists or not. Now, choosing God as a belief, I will do it if it helps my mission. Does that make sense? So here's the thing. I am choosing to live because I can observe every being suffers. My existence requires consumption requires production requires suffering to happen. So because I don't like that, either I die or I live to reduce suffering. Now that's my philosophy of life. Now, where do I need God? I don't really need the idea of God. The only thing is, the world is a very scary place. Now, I'll give an analogy. I live in a farm. It's a 2-acre farm. When I'm some nights, if I'm alone there, I'll be a little scared. Especially, initially when things were not built, we didn't even have power. I would have been scared. If I knew somebody was sleeping in the next room, I'll be at ease. Now that person, even if they decide to just leave in middle of the night, as long as I thought they were there, that gave me peace of mind. So it's instrumental rationality. If I believe in God and that gives me peace of mind, then I will choose that belief. Now, that does open a can of worms. If God exists, why is world such a horrible place? So now we are stepping into the idea of mental model. So my model of the world, and this has got nothing to do with the book, but because we've gone down this path, in my model of the world, devil is the one who created the world, which is why it has so much suffering. God's the guy who's just trying to hack the world to reduce some suffering. He's using us as the agents. When we don't get with the program, there's hell and heaven to incentivize us or punish us.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So basically आपने सारी टेंशन तो भगवान को आउटसोर्स कर दी.
Like only for the peace of mind. That's what I'm saying. God exists, doesn't exist. It doesn't matter to my day to day life what I am doing. The only thing is, I do it with a bit more peace of mind when I do it because, because there are tricky situations when we are rescuing animals. Excuse me. Sometimes you're going to rescue cows that villagers have tied up. Sometimes you're dealing with a mob. Sometimes you have to send your team in a risky situation. Sometimes you have to be in a risky situation. So all of that, it has to be done. We just do it with a bit more peace of mind that we are doing good work. God's watching out for us.
Fair enough. Now, I want to focus on one particular chapter, that is chapter 9, where you talk about I quit quitting. Now, again, obviously, see, I don't want to give a lot of the book away, नहीं तो कौन पढ़ेगा? यहीं पे सारा मैं book अगर discuss कर लूंगा तो. So the point is that the centrifugal theme of the book, from what I have understood, is suffering and happiness. And again, you can correct me because this is how I have perceived it after reading the book. Whether suffering and happiness, it is all part of your journey, and your journey is your existence in this particular form as a proper human. Abhi, whether there is a soul or not, I'm not here to debate that. I'm just talking about my existence in this materialistic form where I am suffering and I am happy and I'm going through these different emotions, and I manage this existence. And my entire journey is management of this existence. And for that is what you call you should have purpose. Am I right?
Yes, I do. I mean, it's perfectly possible to live without purpose. A lot of people actually do. It's just not an optimal way to live.
But can we live without purpose? Like how? How does one live without purpose? Like existence itself by default is like, see, if you don't have a purpose, then the natural thing would be you get suicidal, right? Like I think just the need of wanting to survive at a cognitive level, isn't that a purpose itself? Because that's a inbuilt code in us as Homo sapiens.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that is the core purpose. A lot of us are privileged enough where that is taken care of. Otherwise, we would never come face to face with this existential suffering. The whole root of this existential suffering is that we have taken care of our survival. That's happening on autopilot. And now we are like, what next? That's the problem. And when I say purpose, now we go back to the point of defining things. When I say purpose, I mean an overarching idea, something like a unifying idea where everything you do pulls your life in that single direction. Most people do not have that. They have mini projects. They have a checklist from society, like you gotta earn, you gotta get married, you gotta have kids, you gotta make your kids a replica of yourself, blah blah blah, buy this, buy that. When they run out of things, they do feel a little lost. It depends on which age it happens. If it happens early on, people go for a new vehicle, or what should I say? You get a girlfriend or a boyfriend. All of that happens. If you're old, sometimes people then tend to find ashrams and religions, or they just start hassling their kids. It's like हमारे को पूछता नहीं है बच्चा, because they've run out of things to do.
So basically what you're saying is that our life is based on one anchor or the other. Different times पे हम different anchors ढूंढते हैं, या different चीजें हमारे anchors हो जाते हैं. Like and India, this is not an endorsement of what happens in India. I believe more and more women, if they want to, should join the workforce, before somebody misunderstands me. But I'm just saying, in India, the standard model where I would say a lot of Indian men go through this, especially my parents' generation, where the man was used to working from early 20s to 60, 65, 70. And the man's life was basically the job or the small business, because a lot of Indians still own small businesses because that's how life is, or just working in the farm, right? And both the man and the woman, like most small businesses are run by the man and the woman in India. And then eventually that stops. And I have seen, even in my extended family, a lot of men just breaking down. They don't know what to do because they were so used to a routine. So what used to be happening, in my view, was everybody had a routine. मैं सुबह उठूंगा, मैं बाथरूम जाऊंगा, ब्रश करूंगा, नहाऊंगा, नाश्ता करूंगा, गाड़ी में या बस में बैठूंगा, मैं काम पे जाऊंगा, मैं काम करूंगा और मैं वापस आ जाऊंगा. नाउ इसके बारे में different people have different takes. Like in the Western world, a lot of people say that the retirement ages need to be changing because reproductive rates are falling off the roof, and immigration is not a substitute for that. And they say, oh, we should change our retirement rates because then a lot more people will be part of the workforce. I'm just giving you a hypothetical economic answer that they've come up with. I think it's not really an economic issue. It's a social issue, and depression is real. So they are thinking कि अगर लोग काम करेंगे तो वो distracted रहेंगे, and if they are physically agile, they should go on doing that. Do you think most people are capable of finding meaning like you did? I'm genuinely, I'm not trying to butter you, but see, in your case, you might think, अरे मैंने कर लिया, दूसरा क्यों नहीं कर सकता? भाई, दूसरों की कैपेसिटी नहीं होती है, दूसरे इतना सोच नहीं पाते, और दूसरों में शायद वो कॉन्फिडेंस भी नहीं होता वो करने का. तो क्या आपको लगता है कि इस ज्यादातर लोग काम अपने आप को सिर्फ पैसा कमाने के लिए नहीं करते हैं? आई नो सो मेनी पीपल एट द एज ऑफ 60 हु डोंट वर्क फॉर मनी. अब ये छोड़ दो, आपको लगता है ये मिडिल क्लास नहीं है? मेड्स, ओके, मुंबई जैसे शहर में मेड्स, आई so many maids that come into our housing society, their children are now with decent jobs. उनकी बिल्डिंग रीडेवलपमेंट में चली गई या कुछ हो गया, तो वो बिल्डिंग का रेंट ही इतना आ जाता है अभी कि इवन मेड्स हैव अ डिसेंट लाइफ. तो मैं एक बार दो तीन को पूछा था, मतलब तू तू क्यों आ रही है काम करने को? बोलती है घर पे बैठ के कंटाला आता है. सो ये है बात.
So, to answer your question, do I think it's possible for everybody to find a purpose? I think if it was, we wouldn't have needed religion. So the fact that we have so many religions and a large population subscribes to them means that all of us, do not have the capability to find meaning. That, and as unfortunate as that is, and as elitist as it might sound, but yeah, I don't think it's for everyone.
But then don't you think religion is a brilliant product in that sense? It's like, ready-made market में पेटी पैक item कि भाई आजा.
It is. It absolutely is. Like, see, everything originates because there was a need for it. Because there are people who do need a purpose, who do need a belief system. That is how we are built. But then, for some reason, a large population does not have the faculty to think for themselves, to find their value system. Like Nietzsche said, Übermensch.
Yeah, and you mentioned that in the book, Nietzsche.
That is not everyone, which is why they need to be given a set of principles that they can follow, so they don't damage themselves and others in the course of living. So that's the central idea of a religion, and that's a good idea. But like any other organization, when the founder leaves, it tends to get corrupted. So it got corrupted, it gets misused. I get scared thinking of, look at all these people, they do have some morality from religion, you even subtract that from these people, what are they going to do?
But then how do we draw the balance between look, in my own book I made the case for religion, ironically, coming from a guy who actually disbelieves 90% of it. So um uh, and I still understood that at scale religion plays a very crucial role of that, societal anchor. And in fact, one of the fallings of secularism has been that people don't understand, with the rise of secularism, with the natural byproduct outside of India, I repeat, I'm talking about the Western world because I've lived a significant part of my life, like you, in the Western world. A lot of what happened in the Western world, especially post the 1990s with the rise of new atheism, and from 94 new atheism rises, and basically the church collapsed, like the edifice of the church collapsed. Now this is not what is happening in India, which is very fascinating. There are Pew polls to back it up. Like, even the gap between the religiosity quotient between urban and rural India, cutting across religions, is very little. Like, urban India is mildly less when it comes to religiosity compared to rural India, like 2-3 percentage point का फर्क है. So it's not like urban India में religiosity नहीं है and rural में है. No, which is very unlike the Western world. Like, Western world में cities are very, very irreligious, and the small towns are where Christianity survives. And there also now it's getting challenged due to secularization. In such a world, I actually see this problem very much in the open, where a lot of, like, I often said that a lot of these claims, and again, I don't care if people identify as a feral cat. I mean, best of luck to them. But the point is that when they are identifying as a feral cat, it basically is they're doing exactly what you talk about in the book. They're actually trying to make sense of their existence. वो जो मतलब जो बोलता है कि मैं ये हूं, मैं वो हूं, मैं ये आइडेंटिफाई करता हूं, मैं वो बेसिकली एक नया रिलीजियस मॉडल ढूंढ रहा है. सो देन how do we in India, with our own models, because see, every society is different, and it would be rather naive to say that the by and large fabric of India is Eastern. I'm not saying that it doesn't mean Abrahamic religions don't get to exist in India. They do. But even the Abrahamic religion of India is very Eastern. Like Bulle Shah, for example. I'm a Punjabi. So Bulle Shah was not your classical, Sunni Islam. Bulle Shah was very Indianized in his thinking. So where do you see the next? See, because India is going to get more and more prosperous. With prosperity will come boredom. So how do we deal with this in our journey to be a developed nation? As the Prime Minister says, by 2047, in 100 years, we should be a developed nation. That's what we aim for as a country. Or let's say our journey to a 10 trillion economy. Like these issues that you talk about in your book are going to increase, not decrease.
Absolutely. So how do we tackle this issue? Well, I am hopeless when it comes to tackling these issues at scale. I don't think they can be tackled for the very simple reason a large segment of population either does not have empathy or is not in touch with it. Then, a large population will bring the next large section, will bring a large section of the next generation. So this thing's only gonna get worse. That's our big social problem. Apathy is the big social problem. Now, religion can be a solution to this, but it has to be, for lack of a better word, used very carefully. So I identify as a Hindu. I was born in a Hindu family, and the concepts that I have picked from Hinduism, and I don't follow any religion, the concepts that I like in Hinduism are non-violence, ahimsa, compassion, that's karuna, and karma yoga. I see compassion and karma yoga as very tight because compassion is action, karma yoga is action. How do you get this to people? So I have been working on awareness for 10 years. We work against suffering, which means reminding people of their own belief that we have to be empathetic. Now, if a large section of population doesn't believe in that, I mean, there's no fixing that. I can only talk. So I see people in these two camps. Like, say, let's say here's Donald Trump on one end, and there's Buddha on the other. There's people either going in this direction or or that direction. Doesn't matter where they are, but the direction matters. I'm only talking to people who are going in this direction. They have that spark of empathy alive. I'm getting, so we use videos, we use animations, we do get a lot, we do get decent reach. We get tens of millions of views. So we remind people of their beliefs. Sometimes they are doing things they are not aware, so we give them information. Sometimes they are doing horrible things because they have incorporated an illogical idea in their belief system, so we counter that using logic. So so we use emotion, we use information, we use logic. That's what we do. But I don't do it because I think it can fix the world. I think it can help me reach a few more people, and there would be a little less suffering. But my work, my life is based on a solid foundation of pessimism, philosophical pessimism.
Explain this philosophical pessimism.
So that's like, suffering is the default. There is no fixing it. So I'm not working towards fixing it and getting like, discouraged. I have embraced it. Darkness is the default. If you light a lamp, there would be some light in some area for some time as long as the lamp is burning. That's it. Eventually, the lamp will go out and darkness will prevail. What I am trying to do with my work is light a lamp, make it very intense so I can, have a big area where there is light. And not only that, have other people come, light their lamps, and and have some light in their corner of the world, which is why inspiring others is a big part of our work. But again, I just want many, many lamps for burning as long as they can, with while knowing 100% that eventually darkness will prevail.
So I want to keep the last bit because I think it's a very important bit. And you start your book by saying, if you aren't reading this book, you'd be spending time scrolling through your social media feed. So you mentioned the word social media 4 times in your book. Okay. I am a person who spends a lot of time creating content, but I will give you my secret of staying away from this in many ways is I love reading. So reading is my passion. I spend almost every day 3 to 4 hours. Either I'll read a paper, newspaper, or multiple articles of different newspapers. I have digital subscriptions. It gives me flexibility. I don't have to read one good aisa lamba hard paper. That way I can read, pick and choose. I tend to read books, or I listen to an audiobook or a podcast. My day, at least 4 to 5 hours, goes in genuine content consumption. And it leads to a lot of knowledge. I don't do 60-second reels as a default position. I'm one of those rare dinosaurs who actually does not consume 60-second reels, because I learn virtually nothing there. I'm being very honest. I feel like to break down an idea, you at least need a 10-minute segment कि भाई 60 सेकंड में मैं क्या ही जानूंगा, मतलब मैं नहीं करता हूँ. And I have decided my life to be the way it is. But we cannot ignore the reality that social media has its advantages and disadvantages both. So we live in such a world where, आज मैं आपको सच्ची बोलूं, कितने सारे सीनियर सिटीजन्स के लिए व्हाट्सएप एक टाइम पास का जरिया है. आप मानो या ना मानो, ये कड़वी सच्चाई है कि हम लोग वो मजाक उड़ाते हैं कि ये व्हाट्सएप अंकल, व्हाट्सएप आंटी. भाई, अगर वो अंकल और आंटी से वो व्हाट्सएप छीन लिया ना, तो वो क्या करेंगे मेरे को ये बताओ। मैं ये बहुत बहुत गंभीरता से ये बात कह रहा हूँ, क्योंकि हमें मजाक उड़ाने की आदत हो गई है। सोशल मीडिया के फायदे भी हैं, सोशल मीडिया के नुकसान भी हैं। तो हाउ डू वी इन दिस व्हाट यू आर कॉलिंग फाइंडिंग पर्पस, dealing with happiness and suffering and all of this, how do we deal with this monster? Because recently I shared this article on my social media. It was written by Alec McLean and Jakey Lebol. They were basically reviewing 5 longitudinal studies about social media and depression. And I want to read a quote for you where they said many studies have found a correlation between heavy social media use and high levels of internalizing disorders, example anxiety and depression in adolescents, especially in girls. However, most of these studies are cross-sectional. They measure social media use and depression symptoms at the same point in time. Whether the association observed in cross-sectional studies extends to longitudinal studies, which follow the same participants over months or years and measure both social media use and mental health, is a critical question. Luckily, more and more data is available from such longitudinal studies, and researchers are leveraging these data sets to estimate whether earlier levels of one variable predict later changes. Now, Jonathan Haidt, someone again, one of the authors that you mentioned, I think is the first book you have mentioned in your book recommendations in the latter half in the reading. Jonathan Haidt has been long after this hypothesis that social media is really having a giant impact in many ways, and we are just living through this experiment at scale with all of humanity. How do you factor in social media in this entire existence model and purpose seeking model?
See, again, I'm very utilitarian. So I see social media as like it gives us access to people. Earlier, only politicians and celebrities and industrialists used to have that access. Social media has democratized it. So that means people like me can put their ideas across. So that's why I like it. I don't like consuming content. I wish people would not just go through reels and flip through their emotions, because sometimes, I mean, they're seeing a video of a dog being beaten up, and suddenly a happy video, and suddenly something entertaining. It's just very weird. But while they are at it, I want to make the best use of it, and I tend to distill our messages into 15, 30, 60-second videos. So yeah, I mean, it helps me get the job done. How else do I reach people?
I get it, but if where do we draw the line? Is what I'm saying is कि ये जो तमंचा है हमारे हाथ में, करके हम लोग यही करते रहते हैं. So are there any tools? Like in my case, I don't know. It's very easy for me. था मैंने रख दिया मेरे को कुछ होता नहीं है. Or but the thing is, I like reading digitally is because I like to make those color coded notes, and मेरे को मेरी खुद की हैंडराइटिंग नहीं समझ पड़ती, इतनी गंदी है मेरी हैंडराइटिंग. तो मेरे लिए टाइपिंग वाज द ग्रेटेस्ट इन्वेंशन कि भाई टाइप कर दो, बहुत अच्छा है और मेरे को याद रहता है. नहीं तो देयर हैव बीन ओल्ड बुक्स ऑफ माइन दैट आई हैव रेड एंड देन आई टेक आउट हाउस लाइक ओ ले मैंने ये क्या लिखा है, मुझे ही खुद को नहीं समझ में आ रहा है मैंने क्या लिखा है, इतनी गंदी हैंडराइटिंग है मेरी. सो that kind of a thing. So for me, I am like in very much like you, it's utilitarian for me, but I am very much aware of the fact that it is very addictive. We cannot
Yeah.
deny. So how do we deal with the addiction aspect is what I'm trying to
So I'll show you. I'll show you a very simple hack that I shared a few days ago. So this is what my phone looks like. It's black and white. So something I've kept enabled. It's an accessibility setting. You can make your phone just black and white. It just makes it less interesting. I mean, that's it. I mean, because they are trying to hack your brain. So you have to use hacks to get rid of addiction. Now, another thing that helps in my case is I have a purpose. Having a purpose, it just solves almost everything in your life. I stay so focused on it. If I get on my phone, it's to post content or I'll engage with people who have who have commented on what I have posted with by putting some thought into it. So I do everything with utility. So if somebody has a purpose in their life, a lot of it's solved. You don't need an addiction. It doesn't. People tend to pick up their phone when they don't feel uh, heard, or when they don't know what they are doing next. I don't go through that because of my purpose. I'm so focused on it. Everything's just out of everything's everything has its volume turned down. So that's one. But of course, you can't just have a purpose like that. So use hacks like this. Turn your phone black and white. It's just you're gonna gradually lose interest in it. But you have to, I wish people would read more. Again, that's a tall order. If I tell you, you don't know, like you have 15 minutes to kill suddenly, don't go for your phone. Go for a book. Have a book handy. But that would be just a bogus theoretical thing to say, because most people don't like reading. And to be honest, I am not a person who has solutions for most people. I'm not a most people type of person.
Fair enough. I see, for me, reading is like a muscle memory. Muscle train करना होता है आपको. जैसे आप रोज वॉक करोगे 10,000 स्टेप, तो आपको आदत लगेगी 10,000 स्टेप वॉक करने की. आप अगर रोज पढ़ोगे तो ही आपको पढ़ने की आदत लगेगी. मेरे को पढ़ने की आदत मेरे माँ बाप से लगी, because we have a giant library. I saw my parents reading since I was a small child. मम्मी आज भी पढ़ते हैं, डैडी आज भी पढ़ते हैं. घर में अखबार आते हैं, घर में पुस्तकें होती हैं. So it's just a culture of reading in the house. I picked it up from mom and dad, and I'm just carrying on the legacy of mom and dad. I love reading, man. मैं जिधर भी होऊंगा ना, मैं physical book नहीं, मगर फोन में Kindle, लैपटॉप में Kindle, हर जगह Kindle होता है. या कभी इंडियन एक्सप्रेस उठा लिया, कभी मिंट उठा लिया, कभी न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स उठा लिया, कभी स्वराज्य मैगजीन उठा ली, कोई ना कोई. जस्ट पढ़ते रहो. मैं पढ़ता हूँ. मैं अगर अभी फ्लाइट में वेस्ट हो रहा है मेरा टाइम, पढ़ लो. एनी टाइम ऑडिबल की एक बुक डाउनलोडेड होती है. अगर फ्लाइट में जर्नी कर रहा हूँ, वहां पे भी बुक लगा लेता हूँ. बुक सुनो, पॉडकास्ट सुन लो. सो इट्स अ हैबिट. आई थिंक वो लॉन्ग फॉर्म अटेंशन की जो हैबिट है ना, वो बहुत डिस्ट्रॉय हो रही है. एंड the one rule I have is I don't watch reels. मैं consciously avoid करता हूँ, because I think that 60-second segment na, that kills your attention. And for me, who has a habit of doing long form work, I need concentration. And I think I want to maintain that muscle of concentration for me, which is why I am able to have these conversations with a lot of people, is because I can pay attention. I can pay attention for a long period of time to what the other person is trying to say. And I think that is a practice I have inculcated through my reading and listening to podcasts. And I think it has helped me a lot. But Robin, this has been a great chat. I thoroughly enjoyed reading your book. बहुत मजा आया मुझे पढ़ के, because after a while ऐसा लगा कि यार कोई एक ऐसी चीज के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं. And a lot of times, people will scoff, अरे देश में इतनी गरीबी है, तुमको इसकी पड़ी है. भाई, मगर ये भी जरूरी है. इस देश में गरीब भी बहुत जल्दी कम हो रहे हैं. तो भाई, कोई अगर ऐसी किताब लिख रहा है जो मिडिल क्लास एंड अबव के लिए डील करती है, तो भाई वो भी जरूरी है. सो आई वांट टू कांग्रेचुलेट यू ऑन दिस बुक, एंड आई हैड अ लॉट ऑफ फन रीडिंग इट. सो थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Thank you.
So guys, we'll wrap up today's discussion. All the details, whether it's Robin's book or all his social media handles, everything will be there in this description of the podcast. So just read the description below. I would urge all of you, because जो मेरी ऑडियंस है वो इसी किस्म की ऑडियंस है, you will enjoy. It's not a large book also. छोटी सी book है, पढ़ो. You'll have a lot of fun reading the book. And you know it for a fact that no book that I recommend on the Cārvāka podcast comes without me personally reading it. So अगर मैंने पढ़ी है तो मैं झेल पाया हूँ पूरी बुक, तो ही मैंने कवर की है. नहीं तो मैं कितनी किताबें मुझे आती हैं, मैं पढ़ना शुरू करता हूँ, मुझे अच्छी नहीं लगती, मैं पब्लिशर को मना कर देता हूँ, मैंने नहीं पढ़ी भाई, मैं नहीं कवर करूंगा ये. So this was a book that I enjoyed. I insist all of you go buy this book, and I'll see you guys next time. Until then, namaste, take care.